sneaking up on their live self. And I thought that that was so clever. So it's funny to see what people are doing in this crazy new world we live in. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's get into the intro here. For everybody that is joining us live, this is the first of a series of webinars that we're doing. So I want to give you a little bit of context. So as you know, if you're joining this, I'm Chris Ronzio, founder and CEO of Trainual. We're doing this webinar for the first time, and really it's to help business owners and leaders like you transition and adapt during this new time that we're in. We're calling these the hot button business conversations. So stay tuned, and we'll provide more information on the next couple that you can join. To give you a little background, if you don't know Trainual, we're a tool for documenting and delegating what you do. But today we're joined by Liam Martin. Liam's a good friend of mine, co-founder of Time Doctor, which is a time tracking and productivity tool. And he's also the co-organizer of Running Remote, which is the world's largest remote work conference. So we'll be focusing on best practices for how you can transition your business to remote, and then just making sure you've got all your new policies and procedures documented. So let's get into it. Liam, thank you again for being here on short notice.
Thanks for having me. I would always show up on short notice for you.
I appreciate it. So we've been talking about remote for years. You and I have had this conversation. I know we participated in your last event out in Bali, and
Yep.
we were having this remote dialogue before it was such a hot button thing, which now it's been just thrust into the forefront of business. So I'm curious, how have you seen the conversation around remote change?
Well, it's gone from a nice to have to a must have within a month.
Hmm.
So we've gone from people saying, yeah, remote is an employee perk to remote is the way that I'm going to get myself through this economic uncertain time. And I think that it's really important that everyone recognize, number one, that remote isn't as scary as everyone thinks it's going to be. I love that the media is using the terminology work from home, because work from home is you're locked in your house, you can't go outside, and there's this scary virus that may or may not do horrible things to our economy and to your loved ones. And remote work is you can work from a coffee shop, you can work from your home office, you can work from a co-working space, you can travel the world. It really does provide you that type of freedom. And I think after we come out of this, we're going to see a huge monumental shift in the way that we work. And I think that remote work is going to be a much bigger part of the pie than it was before. And tools like Time Doctor and Trainual are going to be really critical for actually figuring out how to make your team function and operate properly.
Yeah. When we were in Toronto, I remember talking about this idea of a digital nomad and how that was such a scary thing and the most extreme version of remote. And that's kind of what people
Mhm.
thought. Whereas now this work from home is kind of level one remote. You know, this is like the most approachable version of how, if you can function from your house remotely and get your teams functioning there, then it really opens up possibilities on, you could almost be anywhere, right?
Yep. Well, so the thing that a lot of people I think are going to understand in the next 3 to 6 months is, on average in the United States, an employee that you put in office costs on average $12,000 per year just to house, right? That's just an office cost. So if you can remove all of those costs, you're actually going to become a lot more efficient. And I know that a lot of business owners are probably watching us right now. This is one of the biggest things that you can do right now to pull 20 to 30% off of your P&L today,
Hmm.
is pivot right now, at the cost of an office versus the cost of losing people. You know, if you have to make those cuts, I would go for the office lease every single time. And that's what I'm teaching everybody. And it looks like it's definitely working. We're seeing a huge monumental shift towards remote work. And surprisingly, the people that were terrified of it 2 months ago that are now forced into it are saying to themselves, wow, this is actually not that bad. It looks like
Yeah.
we're producing the same amount of output, which is very exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get into it. There's a lot we've got to cover. We've only got 25 minutes to do it. So let's go through this structure that we laid out of, when people are thrust into this, what do they need to focus on today? What do they need to work on next week when they've got some breathing room, and then in the next month or a few months to follow? So let's go through that. And then if we have some time at the end, we'll do a dialogue or some Q&A. Sound good?
Yeah, sure. Sounds great.
Okay, so I imagine that most people watching this are already remote. And so today for them might have been last week. But in case they're still fumbling through this, what are the things that you need to tackle first? What do you need to put in place
Sure.
so that you can handle this?
So today, if you are just saying, hey, and I know probably people have been remote for at least a week to maybe 4 or 5 weeks, but let's just assume that you're assessing today. You need to be able to figure out your financial assessment, and you need to be able to do your tool assessment. So financial assessment, very simple. You need to assess your P&L, figure out what you can cut, and assume that this is probably going to last, I would say, 6 months. So say to yourself, what cash on hand do we have? And how can we get to the point 6 months later where we're going to be pivoting? Maybe we're going to be um, re-identifying different opportunities and trying to find new revenue sources, those types of things. So do that assessment, figure out your liberal and conservative estimate. And then what I would suggest that you do, which is definitely painful, make those cuts as quickly as possible. The reason being is you're currently bleeding and you need to be able to stop the bleeding. That's the first priority. After that, then you want to be able to actually go into a very simplistic tool stack. So
Hmm.
uh, that's something that I think is, again, these are the kinds I always talk about in slides or in presentations, that it's
Yeah.
people, process, and tools in that order.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think we're going to have to reverse that today. Let's just deploy the tools and then we'll figure out the details later.
Yeah.
So
It's been a
go ahead.
scramble for sure. So I want to stop on the financial piece and just give some advice real quick. If I think for anybody that feels like they've got this safety net of cash in the bank, I've talked to a few business owners that say, yeah, I've been frugal and I've got a couple months of operating expenses saved up, and they don't feel the pressure to react today because they think it's going to blow over. And I would say you should definitely be as conservative as possible because, like Liam says, we don't know if this is 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. You don't know
Right.
if it's going to shift the base of your customers or your business, and what pivots you'll have to make. So we operate with like a 13-week cash flow kind of statement, which is a recommendation I've been hearing a lot. If you have Excel, it's just there's a marketplace of templates in Excel. Just search small business cash flow and it'll come up with that template, and you can plug in your cash on hand, your basic expenses, your expected income sources, and it'll model out what your bank looks like over the next few weeks. So for me, that's a comfort level of saying, how long do I have to figure this out? Like we should at least have
Yeah.
a timeline that, okay, I can sustain like we are today for this long. And then that's my timeline to figure out how to push that runway even further. So I think important point you made. When you flip into the tools, assessing the tools, is it looking at your current stack, or are you just picking from a set of remote friendly tools?
I'm going to
What are
give you the
you?
remote 101 tools, right? So the stuff
Okay.
that just a lot of people don't really think about, and they should be. So as an example, I'm wearing these, which are the Bose SoundTrue Ultras. They're $77 on Amazon. You can still get them. The reason why I like these earbuds is because they're very comfortable, but they also have a very good microphone. So they allow you to be able to actually work remotely very quickly and easily. You can buy these and Amazon prime them to everyone inside of your team. And having a good mic is really important. Another honorable mention connected to that, I think you'll probably be able to see this on me. So I use a tool called Crisp, KRISP.ai. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, Chris.
Mm-mm. No.
No?
What is
Okay,
it?
so basically what Crisp does is it's an AI that continuously monitors all the audio that's coming out of my tracks, what I'm currently doing. So as an example, I don't know if you can hear this, Chris, but I'm currently snapping my fingers, and it's removing all of those background sounds. So if there's a dog barking, if there's kids crying, all that kind of stuff, it's going to remove all that audio interference live, which is super powerful if you've got kids around and all that kind of stuff. Crisp.ai,
Awesome.
fantastic product. I would also send everyone to speedtest.net. So send everyone to speedtest.net if they have a ping of below 60 and an upload and download of below 5. What I would suggest that you do is upgrade their internet, because it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to do Zoom calls reliably, as an example. So you can literally send them to speedtest.net, have them run a speed test, and then send you back the URL. And then that will actually document exactly how fast their internet was at that particular time. Slack
Wow.
and Twist, those are fantastic tools. Instant messaging for remote teams. So basically it's like a big WhatsApp group, but you can bring in different integrations. Slack or Twist are both options that you can go
Okay.
with on that side. Communication, Skype or Zoom. If you want a free option, go with Skype. If you want a paid option, go with Zoom. Zoom is better, but again, it costs money, so it depends on where your P&L is. Project management, I'd go with Trello or Basecamp. They're both fantastic options. Process documentation, obviously Trainual, and time tracking, Time Doctor. I'm a little biased on that one, but we really are the best tool specifically designed for remote workers. So that's the quick and dirty one, just to kind of get everyone up and running. And the biggest thing that you need to be able to manage inside of remote teams is the actual meetings and the process documentation, which actually we can get into. And I'm sure that you guys are probably talking nonstop about that, but it's so important to be able to have proper process documentation inside of your business.
Amazing. Okay, I didn't want to interrupt you because you were
Yeah,
rattling off such a valuable list of stuff there, but I want to just, as a summary, go back through this with people. And if Becky or Jamie, if you're watching, and you can put this in the live chat, the Bose headsets that you recommended, Liam. So really, just any kind of noise canceling headset or earbuds, I think is a great idea. Crisp.ai was to keep the sound out from the ambience around you, kids
yeah.
screaming, things like that. I'll install that after we hang up here. Speedtest.net, I ran this yesterday to make sure I didn't need to upload, increase my own speed, because I was interviewing someone that had such a bad connection. And I was like, I hope this isn't me. But great suggestion. So have every employee run this and make sure that they're up to par. Slack, Twist, Conversation. I think to me, that's the most basic. You know, if you're out of the office, you at least need to be able to continue the conversation. And Slack is an easy way to do that. Skype or Zoom, if you've got the connection to be able to have calls like this clearly. And then project management, to be able to prioritize who's going to do what. You know, you find yourself in this remote world, and at least everyone needs a task list of what they're responsible for, and they can jump in and say, here's what I'm going to get done this week or today. And then you get into process documentation, time tracking, things like that. So we'll talk more about that next. Is that kind of where you would start for today? That's it, to hit the ground running?
Yeah, I mean, that's just today, right?
Okay.
So you can go in, you can install all those things, and and that's a lot, right, to do today. So I
But
think
you
that's
can do
probably a
all
full
of
day at
those
work.
things. You know,
Yeah,
I think we should create a checklist and just send that out to say, here's your day one checklist.
I
And
think there's a
like
product that you could literally set all that stuff up for and put a little checklist together
a
and send it to
template.
everybody
Yeah, we
afterwards.
could
Yeah.
totally do that. But I mean, it should be on a public on the website as well. So we'll work on that. Okay, so you get through the day one of like being thrown into remote. You get the tools, the equipment, the internet speed. Take us to next
Next week.
week.
Yeah. So next week is you've got to build process documentation, and then you've got to set up your communication flow. So
Hmm.
process documentation, I mean, you guys do that better than anyone else in the industry. But what I would suggest that people do is audit all of the sacred knowledge inside of your organization, or at least that's what I call it. So ask yourself this critical question. What does one person know inside of the company that's absolutely critical to the function of the company? And do other people know that information? So I'll give you a perfect example. There was a team that I spoke to last week that just went remote. They have about 60 employees. And the woman that is responsible for payroll is unfortunately quite sick with coronavirus.
Mm,
And she's probably going to be sick for the next month. So no one knows how to actually cut the checks inside of the company.
wow.
That's an example of the things that you need to kind of think about and audit exactly. And that's kind of like very important. We all need to do that even day two, right after
Yeah.
you've deployed all your tools. So
Yeah.
get
I
that
think
information and digitize it, put it inside of Trainual, and then at least there you've got that ability to know what's going to be, happening inside of your business.
Right. So like in a different circumstance, when people ask me what to document first, I usually tell them it's the things that will get the greatest ROI, the things you're training the most people on or that you have the most people doing. But in this case, I think the things that you need to document first are, like you said, it's the stuff to keep the lights on at the business. It's, you have to run payroll, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And so take I guess, inventory of what the most urgent things at your company are, that if you could not do those things, the wheels would stop moving. And those are the things to document first, even if, like Liam says, there's only one person that does it. And this is counter to most of the advice that I give, because usually I'm saying document the things that you've got 10 people or 100 people doing, because
Mhm.
the ROI on that is so much greater. But right now, if one person goes out sick, you still need to do that thing. So
Yeah, this is more like emergency process documentation. This is like
yeah.
wartime process documentation, as opposed to, if you were running a ship and there was only one person that could fire the torpedoes, you want to make sure that that person is doubled up, right? That's absolutely critical for you to figure out what to do next. So
Yeah.
assess all that data, figure it out. The other thing that is an unfortunate reality of where we're at right now is run another simulation in your mind and assume that 20% of your team will be sick. So what we're doing is we are actually cross-training everyone inside of the organization. So just last week, um, marketing and sales and customer success can all now do support. So
Hmm.
we had that process documentation already set in, and then we got everyone certified as support reps right now. So that if there's any problems that pop up, we know that we can basically figure that out quickly and easily. So that's another piece that I would suggest that people do. Again, this is a little bit more of a long-term one, but if you guys are using Trainual right now, you should have those playbooks of how to run support, how to run sales, how to run marketing, and get those pieces in place, and then just get people cross-certified. It doesn't
Yeah.
take that long, and it's really easy.
Yeah, so the cross-functional training is a little bit different than within a department, because what we've done and what I think more people probably do is within the marketing team, if you've got 5 people or 10 people, you know that you're cross-training on how to post the social or how to do the ads or how to get a blog or the newsletter out. You've got that cross-training sort of baked in, but across departments is really valuable. And it's
Mhm.
something we've been thrown into because we had roles in the company since that were specifically around managing the office or conducting interviews or things that aren't happening so much right now. And they've been cross-trained on how to do the support tickets and manage our live chat. And so as much as you can cross-train, it gives you the most flexibility. Great suggestion. All right, so you've got a pretty cool framework for documentation, which we all have our different versions of, but I want you to just share what the 4 Ds are, so it'll
Sure.
help someone.
Yeah. Well, I think that yours is probably, you've thought about this longer than I have, but this was, yeah, I have this process called the 4 Ds, which is discover, design, deploy, and debug. So the discovery stage is literally just discovering the history of that process. So how does someone do payroll? Why are they doing it that way? Sometimes you'll actually discover the reason why they're doing it that way is for no logical reason. It was just because that's the way it's always been done.
Hmm.
So that first stage, you can really kind of get a lot more efficiencies built into your system just by having someone else look at it with a new set of eyes. Then once you deploy the design stage, you're literally taking the lessons that you've learned from the discovery stage and you're building out your process. And I like to use what I like to call the rule of 3. So the first time that I do something, I do it for myself. The second time that I do something is I think about process documentation. And then the third time is I write it down for other people. And the reason why I do it the third time and not the 20th time is because it's still fresh in my mind. So I can remember the very first time that I did it, and I can remember all those small details. If you've done something 100 times, your brain kind of goes on autopilot. Like for anyone that, backed out of their driveway today, they didn't actually think to themselves, I'm now putting the car into reverse. I am now releasing the clutch. I am now, pulling out. They just
Yeah,
did it.
second nature.
And
Yeah,
that's not really good for process documentation. You need to have those small details.
yeah,
Once you're past the design stage, you're into deploy. I tell people never ask people once you've deployed something, do you like this? Because everyone will just say yes. say, what are 3 things that I can do to improve this process? Then that leads into the debug stage, where you basically just go through discover, design, and deploy on top of each other until the feedback that you're getting is consistent, meaning there's not really any meaningful feedback anymore, and you've basically got perfect process at that point.
So you've sanded it down, and
It
it's
usually
polished and
takes
shiny.
about 2 to 3 iterations before you're really at a point where anyone can understand it. One of the things that I tell people a lot about process documentation is process shouldn't be easy to understand. It should be impossible to misunderstand. And
Yeah.
that's really critical, because once you've made that switch, then you think to yourself, how could a 3-year-old understand this or a 90-year-old understand this? And if both of those 2 groups can understand it, then the middle should usually take care of itself.
Yeah, I love that. So other suggestions I thought of, you know, you mentioned cross training earlier. If it's hard for you to document something that feels so natural to you because you do it every day, you can get in a conversation like this. One of your colleagues, your employees, interview you about the thing. If it's not natural to them, they'll be asking the questions to jog your mind. So think about that your team as a team of consultants inside your business to help each other document. Another thing you can do is just fire up a screen recorder while you're doing the thing, and then you can process it after the fact. Watch the video on one part of your screen, write up the steps on the side of your screen, and you are the consultant to yourself. So hopefully those are some good tips. But I love this discover, design, deploy, debug process. I've seen it in your slides, and I think it's valuable for everyone that's watching. Anything else you would dig into there on documentation before we move into next month and looking ahead?
I think you have a training resource that you guys put up just recently. I can't remember what the URL was. Your brother had sent it to me, but it's like a whole bunch of different process document resources that are in one place. I suggest don't try to recreate anything. Go and steal it from other people. So
Yeah.
grab their process documents, and then you've got something, you've got a beta version up and running, because at the end of the day, running process documentation is kind of like doing your taxes. No one really wants to do it, but once it's done, you feel a lot happier about your life, and you're a lot more efficient. And that's the thing that everyone needs to understand, is this is something that you may not think is a big priority right now, but once 20% of your team is sick, or you're in, heaven forbid, a really bad situation, those process documents are going to be pure gold.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So at minimum, anyone that's listening, you can go to trainual.com/checklist. There's 150 or 200 different things there, and you can scan the list to see what's really urgent and important for you to document right now. Okay, Liam, looking ahead next month, what should people
Yeah.
be thinking about? I know there's kind of two sides of the spectrum here. So talk us through it.
Sure. So the first one is metrics, right? And then the second one is a little bit of a more unfortunate situation, but it's also mental health.
Hmm.
So when we're talking about metrics, it's important to understand inside of remote teams, you need to force communication inside of remote teams. So communication just doesn't automatically happen. And that's a positive and a negative. There's no like, can I have a minutes inside of remote teams? Because no one is just sort of walking around the office and hanging out around the coffee machine, or the, what do you guys call those things that offices have? Water cooler chats. Again, I've never worked in an office, so I don't know what, but I know that this is what these people talk about all the time. We call you guys on-prems. It's a weird server joke. So those conversations don't happen. So you need to force that communication. So you need to document it, number one. You
Hmm.
need to be able to really have a clear understanding of, what am I going to accomplish in this meeting? What's the outcome of this meeting? How many people need to be in it? And where that communication and information is going. So we do two. We do a weekly sync, which is just literally bringing together all of the team members inside of a department, as an example, and we talk about our big rocks that we need to accomplish throughout the quarter. And they all have quantitative targets. So are they green, yellow, or red? If they're good or great, it's great. If they're red,
Yeah.
then I might spend a little bit more time with them. And then the second one is a one-on-one that I do with every single person that's a direct report to me.
Yeah.
And that's where we get more into the mental health side. But
So I think if people had a great meeting cadence before they were thrown into remote work, you might not have noticed as much of an impact. Because for instance, like we similarly have a great cadence. We do an all hands meeting, the whole company on Monday. We do department meetings, then we do one-on-ones with each of your direct reports. And we just maintained that instead of sitting across from each other in the office, it was over Zoom. So I think that that cadence was super important. And if you don't have that already, definitely get that established. Because if you get into a rhythm with talking to people, it's so much easier to give them the opportunity to vent or communicate or do the personal check-in, see how they're doing. Do they need a day off? You know, we sent out an update to our whole team yesterday saying, don't forget to take PTO. Like just because you're
Mhm.
sitting at your house and you can't travel somewhere, you can request a day off. If you just need some time, you want to just sit and not think about work, that's okay. So I think it's important to check in.
Yeah, I think it's also really important for my second point, which is mental health. So the harsh reality is over the next few weeks to months, we are all going to be stuck inside of our homes. We're not going to be able to go to the movies or to the restaurants or anything else that just kind of gives people that more positive perspective towards life. And
Mhm.
mental health is not something that just happens or doesn't happen. It's a slow process. So what I do in my weekly sync is I start the meeting by saying, how is everybody doing? And then we end the meeting saying, if anyone has any issues, please let me know, reach out to me as quickly as possible. And then on our one-on-ones, I usually actually now, just recently, have added in, how are you doing anxiety-wise out of 10? And then I can actually measure that quantitatively. And we have a couple services that we use, BetterHelp. There's another service that we use as well, which are like online life coaches and therapists that can
We had talk
actually,
space.
yeah, is perfect. Couple of, there's a ton of companies out there that are doing this. And what I
Yeah.
would suggest that you do is, if you can afford that, use that. But if you can't, you need to have those conversations with your employees. I'll give you a personal story, which I was allowed to share. We had one of our team members that was located in Manhattan, and he had a full on panic attack because there was a body bag in his front lobby. And
Wow.
the reality is that there are tons of people that are dying in New York right now. And he came back up and he did a call with me and he said, I can't leave my house. How am I supposed to go and get any food? My entire apartment building is completely infected. What do I know that's clean and not clean? And it's, at that point, we actually figured out a very pragmatic solution, which was, we Instacarted him and Amazon primed him all of his groceries, which is a
Hmm.
very small cost for us. It cost us $200, but it puts him immediately at ease and it gets
Yeah.
him operational and functional. And the other part is making sure that people are working and moving forward. Keeping people busy is really important in this time. But define an early warning system
Yeah.
so that you can measure that, because as I said before, chemical depression is no joke. Usually on average takes about 6 months to get out of a state of chemical depression, and people can fall into it very, very slowly. So
Yeah.
really important to measure that inside of your team.
Yeah, very important. And if you, like Liam said, if you can't afford a service or something for the team, it's free to do check-ins. You know, it's free to send people a Slack message. And we've been doing that just one-on-one, saying, how are you? How are you doing outside of work? I think the recommendations to, do things Amazon Prime or Instacart or Uber Eats or whatever, it's a great recommendation, because if someone can't be clear personally, how are they supposed to be productive professionally? And so we've got to think about everyone as people first and really make sure that our team is strong, our communication is strong. And then once you've plugged that hole, you can get to the metrics and the viability of the business. But without the people, there is likely no business. Great recommendations, Liam. We're at the end of the 30-minute time that we had allocated here. So in case people have to jump off, I want to just summarize this, wrap this up, and then if you want, we can stay on, or I can stay on and answer a couple
Sure.
questions. Up to you. Okay. So thank you again for everyone that's watched this that has to jump off. Look out for our next series, our next episode of this series. I guess we're going to be tackling these things one topic at a time to really help you thrive during this period. So again, Liam is at Time Doctor. Check out Time Doctor for more about time tracking and being productive while you're remote, look at running remote the conference. And also, of course, Trainual is here for you to help you document your processes. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. All right. So with that wrap up, I'm going to end the, let's see, I'm going to end the stream on YouTube. You know what? I'm just going to keep it going. Is there anything else that you want to share about this, or any questions that people want to put into the Q&A here?
Can we call this section like Trainual After Dark or something like that?
After the final rose, after the final remote. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through. One question: does Crisp.ai cost money?
Yes, it does. However, yeah, so it's free on one side. So what I mean by that, I believe they're still running this plan where your recording can be, you can remove background noise from what you're saying, but you won't be able to remove background noise from the other person on the other end. And to me, what I would do is just deploy it for free. And then you just don't have your dog, you're removing your dog sounds and baby, crying and all that kind of stuff. And that's good enough to just get up and running. One honorable mention, however, is it sucks battery like crazy. So if you're running this on your laptop, make sure that it's plugged in because it will melt your battery.
Got it. Yeah, I think, my brother, Jonathan, who, he had a post on LinkedIn that was really popular actually about, don't make excuse or don't feel like you have to make up excuses for the dogs and things like that. So even if you're not using a tool, realize that everybody was kind of thrust into this. And if your kid walks into the office, it's okay. Have them wave and say hello. And I think it's making everything a little bit more human instead of having to replicate the in-office experience with this real buttoned up approach. I think everybody is a bit more understanding right now too. So that's a good thing. Dan says, awesome checklist from Trainual. Thank you so much. Omer, video trainings. Can we do videos directly in Trainual? Trainual does have a screen recording tool. So you can look at our help docs, and if it's not enabled in your account, I don't know which plan you're on, but we can help you with that. There's a lot of free options as well. Let's see. Tips on getting input from coworkers while trying to write up new processes remotely. So this is April. Maybe you could start this question, Liam. If somebody is tasked with being the documentation person, how do they work with the rest of the team to collect all of that?
I think assume you're in a war footing over the next few weeks and treat it in that context. So you can go back to peacetime afterwards, but for right now, what you need to do is reinforce all of your defenses. And in essence, what you're doing with process documentation is you're building virtual defense against worst case scenarios. So I would be very direct with people saying, when we do our process documentation, we usually give out bonuses for people that are interested in building out a process. So if you build out a process and you're a team member, or you update a process and you say, hey, this is no good, we want something better, we pay them. And that's a real easy way of getting people motivated for those types of things. But, I think outside of that, literally telling them, hey, we need to document all this stuff for the safety of the company.
Yeah. And April, what I would say is, we've got, for instance, a people operations team. And one of the things that they've done recently is build out new scorecards for every single role. And they just scheduled hour-long interviews with every person. It took them a couple of weeks to do it, but they went through and talked about everyone's day-to-day, what their current roles, responsibilities are, how they do each thing, what's most urgent. And that kind of, proactive approach of just getting some time on the calendar with everyone just ensures that it gets done. And everybody's bought into this idea. If you give them the context of we're trying to make the playbook and figure out the most urgent things we want to be able to cover for each other, I think everyone wants to participate in that. So it's just, how do you tactically get it done? Schedule some time. Good question from Nick here. After the lockdown, how do you think this will affect work as we know it? So what do you think? We alluded to this at the very beginning, but how will this shift work?
You want me to give you my aggressive perspective on it?
I guess
the office is dead.
There. I'll try to tone it down.
Okay, you give me the other point of it. The office, I think, is dead. And here's the reality. There's going to be two interesting forces that are going to take place. This is completely theoretical, but I think I'm going to be right. Force one, employees that always wanted to work remotely will now say, 2 years from now, they'll say, hey, I want to travel the world, or I want to work remotely. And the boss or manager will say, no, you have to come into the office. But then they'll say, remember that time when I worked remotely for 9 months during the coronavirus and everything was fine? That excuse will no longer exist, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, there are going to be a ton of employers right now and business owners that are looking at their P&Ls, trying to assess how to get through this current tough part of our lives. And they'll come out the other end and they'll have a realization that we took our entire team remote and productivity didn't go down, it actually stayed the same or went up. So why am I paying $100,000 a month for a really expensive, nice office when I don't actually need to pay for that? So I think those two forces will produce a very interesting phenomenon. In 2018, 4% of the US workforce worked full-time remotely, and that was projected to be 50% by 2028. And we are at least there. By my estimates, about 70% of the US workforce is currently working remotely that can work remotely. And that's the biggest labor experiment we've ever done in the history of mankind. So I don't know what's going to happen, but that's my theory.
So I think kind of a hybrid, I think people still will want offices and headquarters and places to meet in person. I think it'll shift over time to be a little bit more like companies own their own co-working space. Like in the way that people come and go in a co-working space, and you might work at a couch one time and there's a phone booth over here and there's these open desks. I think we're going to see offices get more like that, where people are fluid between remote and in the office. So I definitely think that it will change commercial real estate, and we'll have to see what the impact of that is. I know we were about to move into a new office, like had a lease documents for a $30,000 a month lease and didn't sign it because all this was going down. And we said, let's just wait and see. So
you dodged a bullet on
we
that
did.
one. Wow.
Yeah, we did.
That's amazing.
So not entirely sure. Omer, provide where this data is coming from. I'm not sure which data you're talking about. I think these are Liam and I's predictions, but do you have some data source?
I'll put something in the chat. So there's a really good database. Use fyi.com/remote work statistics. I'll throw it down in the chat for you guys.
Perfect.
So that you guys can just check that out. And it's a fantastic database that references all the academic sources.
Perfect. Thank you. Earlier in the chat, Penn said, how do you prepare to replace yourself, the leader? So great question. I think in a normal environment, we could take this to mean succession planning or just getting out of the day-to-day. In this context, it could mean, what if you get sick? What if you just can't operate it's not a 6 to 12 month or 2-year handoff process, but it's all of a sudden a day from now, you can't do what you do. So how do you approach this as the leader?
I have a personal story connected to this. Me and my co-founder, Rob. Rob is located in Sydney, Australia, and I'm up in Montreal, Canada. So we're literally on opposite sides of the planet. And one day, our bookkeeper, we have these little cipher tools to log into our bank account. And the accountant didn't actually put in the cipher correctly 3 times in a row. And on large corporate accounts, that locks you out of your account. I think we were banking with Chase at that point. So because Rob was the only person on that bank account and I was not on that bank account, we tried to negotiate with them for days to try to figure out how to open that account back up. He even said, I'll do a Zoom call and show you my passport. And they said, no, the only way that you can do it is you have to show up to the local branch. So Rob jumped on a plane on 1 day's notice, cost us $8,000 for him to fly 30 hours to San Francisco, got out of the airport, went to the bank, showed them his passport, 5 minutes, unlocked the account, went right back to Australia. Those are the things that you need to be able to understand and audit inside of your business. And I mean, we're talking about just coronavirus, which is definitely a significant concern for a lot of people, but you need to do that same audit for yourself. Where are those open points? Where are
Yeah.
those failure points inside of your business? And it's just, if not now, then when? Do the
Yeah.
audit today. It won't take you more than a few hours.
Yeah, great suggestion. So we also have kind of a beta survey that we've been running inside a couple new Trainual accounts. So I'll mention it here in case anybody wants to jump on this. Just ping our support team, support@trainual.com, and ask for the roles and responsibilities survey. What it is pretty simple, but it takes you through a brain jog of all the things that you do daily and weekly and biweekly, and the things that people are emailing you for, and what would go in your out of office reply. And it can be really useful as a tool to complete yourself as the owner, to say what the bottleneck for currently today. And it's also a great tool to send to all of your employees so that they can complete it and see what they're responsible for. So if you're interested in that, just check out just email our support team. I don't think there's a public link right now, but just support@trainual.com. Let's see. Nick says, any recommendations to spruce up your Zoom background game? So honestly, I'm in my my home office here. So this is, I've got like some lights, and that's that's my game. I've got a Very desk, and otherwise just some good lights and a Logitech camera. Liam, you're in at the Pyramids of Giza twice.
Yeah, that's me. I think it's funny. We kind of do a little game where we put new background photos or videos every week, and we just kind of change it up, and it gives people a little bit of a laugh. So, do that. I think that the other thing is important is you need to, obviously, we don't have a real green screen, but this works pretty well. I would just get a white background, something that's, just white or just blue or one singular color. We find if there's art in the background, it actually kind of just pops up and doesn't work out too well.
Yeah, good suggestion. So you mentioned at the beginning the Bose headset. I think that if you put a few dollars into your remote workspace, whether it's a standing desk or good headphones or a good microphone, it really goes a long way. And when I, came home and thought about the prospect of working from this office for the next 3 months or 4 months, I made a couple purchases right away. So I think it's a good investment. Hamza says Liam's Zoom game is on point. I agree. Pretty
Cool.
fun. All right, cool. So we've mentioned a bunch of resources here in the chat, and if you watch this afterward, it's live on YouTube. We're still live on YouTube, but the video will be posted there. We'll post all of the links to every other resources that Liam and I talked about. Why don't we wrap this up, Liam? If you want to just share really quickly how they can get in contact with you or Time Doctor, Running Remote, plug away.
Sure. So just go to runningremote.com. And we're running our event Remote Aid, which is just assembling a whole bunch of remote work experts. And we're doing Remote 101. So we're not doing Remote 398, which is what we usually do with Running Remote. And if you don't know how to run your remote team, by the end of that conference, that virtual conference, you're going to be able to do it. And everything that we raise is going directly to the Red Cross. Nothing goes to us. So definitely check it out. We're just trying to help. And then on the other side, you want to check out Time Doctor, just go to timedoctor.com, try a 14-day trial. If you are working on anything coronavirus related, or if you're an educational institution, we'll get you in for free. We'll figure it out. So just let us know.
And same thing at Trainual. If you're a school, if you're a student, if you're a nonprofit working on anything COVID-19 related, free accounts, that's something we've been doing. And I think you'll find that there is an abundance of resources and help and assistance, financial assistance from all these tools. This is really a time to help people, invest in people, and then we'll emerge, I think, in a good way once all this settles down. So so thank you, Liam, for the generosity, both with the company, with your time and your resource. I'd like to thank everyone that was here. Again, this was the first webinar that we're doing in this series. So if you liked it, tell someone about it. You can also look at my podcast, Process Makes Perfect, where likely this will air as a podcast episode. But we've got a lot of other great suggestions from industry leaders on there. So again, Liam, thank you for being here. And I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Thanks for having me. Talk soon.
Bye, everyone.